Today on the Sustainable Ministry Show, we talk about the roles of the architect, the contractor, and the laborer, and what those mean for your ministry. This is episode 34. The rant is not over yet.
All right, y'all, we're back with the Sustainable Ministry Podcast, and we're excited to be with you. Today, we are going to be talking about, Brian Johnson and Stephen Ingram and I are going to be talking about something that I kind of get excited about. It's going to sound weird to you, unless you've read our Mark DeVries, our founder, CEO, president of Ministry Architects book called Sustainable Youth Ministry. I have to say, he wrote this book a little bit ago, and it's tragic that the word youth is in the title because sadly, too few people actually read it, thinking that it doesn't pertain to them. But in actuality, this book transcends youth ministry because it's all about systems and structure. One of the things that he talks about is that every ministry should have three very distinct roles being served in it. We've got the role of the architect, we have the role of the general contractor, and the role of the skilled craftsman or the heavy laborer. And so I'm hoping that our conversation today can help you understand what those roles are, who should be filling those roles, and why they're so important.
I guarantee you, if you were watching this podcast and you are in children's ministry or youth ministry, you got into your role to be the laborer. That's why you started doing ministry, because you want to be on the ground all the time in the relationships with the kids, with the children, doing the Bible studies, playing the games, designing the retreats, all that kind of stuff. I guarantee you, 99% got into ministry to be the laborer. And that's awesome because there's a deep, deep passion for relationships. There's a deep passion for being on the ground in the relationships, doing the thing. But the problem is, the calling in professional ministry, I think, is to do some of the laboring. But if you have a youth group or a children's ministry more than 7 people, you're going to have to pull yourself back out of that role some, because part of your calling, I believe, is to empower, equip, and enable other people to also be laborers.
I bet quite a few pastors also got into ministry because of that right there.
Yeah.
Because they want to be in relationship and want to be the one kind of managing and doing those things. Should we define these roles first? So, like, what is the laborer? What is the contractor? What is the architect?
I feel like the laborer is kind of just what Stephen said. They're the people who are doing ministry day in and day out. They're typically highly relational, but they're skilled in for the ministry. They're skilled and ideally paired up with the ministry in a way that they are encouraged and affirmed and using their own personal gifts in that role. The general contractor is typically where we find our program ministry staff people. If you think about a build on a job site, the general contractor is the first to show up, the last to leave. The general contractor is making sure that all the laborers have everything they need to do a good job. So they're also coordinating the effort so that, when you're building a house, the plumbers aren't showing up at the exact same time the electrician is. And a general contractor typically isn't going around with a hammer nailing in nails. That would be a skilled craftsman. That would be your drywaller or whatever. Okay. And so too often churches are hiring these people and they're expected to be all three: the laborer, the general contractor, and the architect. So the architect, if you think about it, they're the people who draw up the blueprint, right? They kind of know the stuff that needs to go into the foundation, and they make sure that there's a design, a blueprint, a vision, if you will. And so the architect is typically not a hired person, because the architect is typically not a full-time forever thing. They come to the site and then they go away into their little trailer, and they just pop in from time to time, making sure that the general contractor is stewarding the blueprint the way it was determined.
Just so I'm hearing you right, laborers are like Sunday school teachers,
Mm-hmm.
whatever grade, right? Or whatever adult class, small group leaders. They're people that are in the midst of an event. Contractors are the people, maybe they're doing volunteer training in your church for an adult small group thing that's happening. And then the architects are the people that are, we talked last week about goals, like big goals.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're the people that are doing that, right? They're casting the vision and saying, here's where we're headed. Does that sound
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where do you guys fall? Kind of naturally, and then what did you have to learn to do?
Mm.
I'll tell you a story. The year is 2016 right now. So 14 years ago, I am in a weekend-long capstone retreat with Princeton. And I have done their whole Princeton certificate program and was in the final retreat. And this old guy starts talking about this sort of thing. The titles weren't there, but basically he was saying, look, if you think that you're going to do youth ministry for the rest of your life by leading all the Bible studies, by being the main speaker at every youth worship, by designing all the retreats on your own, and blah 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 blah, you need to get a job that's actually going to pay you good money, and just volunteer with a youth ministry, because that's not what you should be doing. And man, it hit me right between the eyes, but not in a self-realization way. I just thought, who's this idiot? Because he apparently doesn't understand youth ministry. Well, that idiot was Mark DeVries. And that idiot, and I took him to task that it was a night. I think it was like a Thursday night. I took him to task, and I was like, what do you mean? I don't want to be some CEO of my youth ministry and not get to interact with the kids and not get to, and I just took him to task, and he was kind and gentle and smiled in his Mark DeVries way. And as I started thinking about it, as I started to live into some of the ideas and concepts he was providing us with, I went, oh my dear Lord, this guy is brilliant, and he may have just saved my youth ministry soul. And that's when I became a huge fan of Mark DeVries about 13 years ago, and we've been friends, and he's been a mentor of mine ever since. But that was my natural inclination, because that was what was modeled for me my whole youth ministry. When I was in youth ministry, when I was growing up as a kid in youth ministry, that's what the youth minister did. So that was my natural inclination. However, now I see it in a whole different way. I see, like I said earlier, one of my great jobs is I get to set forth long-term vision, but also I get to empower people. Because when, especially if you're in a mainline church, when we baptize those little babies, we don't say the youth minister or the children's minister is going to be the one who shows them Christian love and nurture in the ways of Jesus. We say the congregation's going to. And so I get to help be a part of that baptismal vow and empower and equip them. So that's my evolution and all that.
Yeah, I would say similarly, I was called to working with youth. I love youth. I love children. There's nothing that gets me more excited than getting onto the level and looking a child square in the eyes, because I've gotten to the level that they're at, and just make them smile and make them feel important, and help them feel valued, and showing them the love of Jesus every Sunday and every midweek. And when I see these kids in town, and just knowing them by name, it's just, I don't know, I feel fulfilled doing that. And then I realized that, okay, I'm not the best manager by nature. I feel like I am totally and brilliantly, giftedly ADHD. And so structure, now that I am the age that I am, I've learned that I crave structure. And so I do the best work when I'm organized and structured, but those things don't come naturally to me. So I really have to work for it.
I had to learn the visionary piece, the architect stuff. That did not come naturally to me early on in ministry. It was something that I had to really kind of set aside special time for and focus on if I wanted to be able to dream where we're going. Now, if you tell me we're going to California, man, I can plan the heck out of that and make sure that everybody's on board and the trains are running and everybody's got what they need and we're going to get there. So I just kind of naturally, I think, fall into that contractor role and had to learn that, learn some of that as well. But I think that's where I naturally fit. And so the architect stuff was something that I had to learn to do. Which kind of prompts my next question. So for staff people, is there a role they should be in? Once they identify what role they are in, what's the next step to make sure the other pieces are in place?
I think if you are designated as the children's minister or the youth minister of your church, I think you have an obligation to the kids, to the parents, to the church, and I think to God, to function in the general contractor role more than you function in the laborer role. If you're in that position and you function only in the laborer role, you're not giving opportunity. You're not giving the people of your congregation the gift of living into their own calling of ministry with children and youth, because they're called to that too. And if you are the only laborer, if you're not giving them direction, equipping them, empowering them, enabling them to do that ministry, then you're robbing them of a gift. And I don't say that in a condemning way. I say it in sort of a liberating way, that it doesn't all fall on your shoulders. So I think the first thing you got to do is you got to say, all right, I've got to be at least 51% in general contractor role.
I'd add too, I think there's something sexy to be said about the visionary role. I think a lot of people think that visioning, casting the vision because you're the leader, is such a high calling. And honestly, it's not a bigger or a better calling.
Mm.
It's just a different calling.
Sure.
And too often, people who need to be good general contractors are trying to be or lead like that big visionary, and they start winging things. They forget details. They forget managing the effort of those skilled craftsmen, those heavy laborers, that they need support. They need encouragement. They need resourcing. They need all that stuff. So if you are a naturally gifted visionary, but you're serving in the role of a general contractor, take heed to be mindful of your job to manage and coordinate the effort of your people. But I think too often, too many of us will spend our time in that visionary role and forget to manage the effort.
That's right.
So the other thing I'm wondering too, then, are there certain tasks that we could just name that fall into those categories that would be helpful for folks to hear? So, for example, volunteer recruitment needs to lie with the contractor, and that will tend to be a staff person. Are there some other tasks that we could just name that would belong to these groups?
I would add to the general contractor, you're going to find yourself troubleshooting a lot.
Yes.
Because the best laid plans, right? And so you can work out as far as you can, but there's always going to be things that pop up, and you're going to have to be someone who is adaptable. You're going to have to be someone who can troubleshoot, and that's a role where you have to really focus on being a non-anxious presence, because you are interacting with those people on the ground constantly. And you've got to carry an air of stability and non-anxiousness and confidence to help them feel empowered and help them feel good about their roles. So you got to be ready and willing to troubleshoot and be able to think on your feet. I would say for the general contractor as well.
Yeah, I just had this quick little kind of thought that sometimes an architect will create a blueprint and they may say you need 4-inch screws. And then the contractor takes it and they realize we got to use 6-inch screws or this thing's going to fall apart. And so sometimes as the contractor, you may have a committee that's playing the architect role for the church or for your ministry. And they have this dream about this thing that's going to happen. And they've put together the plans, they've kind of laid it out. And then you as the staff person are trying to figure out, okay, so now how do I put this into action? And you may find you got to change the dates so it fits people's schedules. There may just be some tweaks that have to be done in the midst of that. Ministries need all 3 components. You got to have all 3 components for that ministry to be sustained. You can be all 3 temporarily. And the predictable result of that is a burnout and a resignation. We've seen that time and time again. So once you've identified your place, help to fill the ministry with the other positions. So if you're a contractor, equip your ministry with architects, equip your ministry with laborers. If you are in the laborer position, start looking for the opportunities to move into the contractor role. Look for trainings that will help you equip other people and plug into those. And then if you still have questions about maybe what a job description looks like for a contractor, maybe what a job description looks like for a committee that's playing the architect role. If you have questions about those things specifically after watching this episode, or questions about any other thing, but if you have specific questions about those, send us an email. Just put that up in the subject line and we'll get something in your hands. If you have questions about the other thing, send it to Melissa. You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, what other thing? I explained last week that we just really want to hear from you. We want to celebrate you. We want to use your awesome ideas. And so if you have them and you have questions or comments, thoughts that you'd like to share with us, send those questions and comments my way at melissa@ministryarchitects.com, or you can tweet at me, and I'm at Melissa Rao on the Twitter.
Or as Siri says when I try to call you, Melissa R-A-U. That's
Yeah, you know what? That's very funny. Steven, does that mean you have the British?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yes, I've noticed, because the British guy is clearly not as smart as the American Siri. I'm just saying.
Whoa.
Because if you had an American Siri,
I'm going to touch that one. Not going to touch that
You've
one.
heard it here by Melissa Rao.
You're going to cause an international conflict. Stop now.
We're in relationships with people, Melissa.
No, I'm not done yet. Rant's not over.
It might be.
Why is that? Why do the good folks in the Apple place not give the same programming to different voices? I don't get it. Anyway, rant over.
Thanks, Melissa R-A-U.
Obviously, my Siri is the very, velvety voice of the British guy too, who calls me my queen.
Lovely.
I'm just saying.
My kids call him King George, so that's what they call him.
That's awesome.
Well, on that good note, Stephen, you want to let them know how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'd love to hang out with you over on Facebook at my speaker author consultant page. You can just look that up, Stephen Ingram, speaker author consultant. Come over there like that. I'll give you updates on what's going on. Also at my blog, 12 Stone Spirituality, where you can read some of the blog stuff, but also get in touch with me about speaking events, training, that sort of thing. And then I'm on the Twitter as well. Stephen, STPHENL Ingram. That's my Twitter handle. So
awesome. And you guys can email me at bryant@ministryarchitects.com. Find me on Facebook at /Bryant Johnson, or check out this new thing that I've recently started called The Postlude at thepostludepodcast.com. Thanks so much for subscribing on YouTube, on iTunes. If you haven't done so, we would invite you to do so. We'd love to spend next week with you as well.
Ha ha!